Black Star vs. Death the Kid is a concept that has been explored a few times throughout the story of Soul Eater, since these two characters have consistently stood at the top of the DWMA totem pole since their introductions. Their rivalry has been a subtle yet important detail over the span of the entire series, so today I'm going to take a look at these two powerhouses throughout the entirety of the manga and see who wins at different points in the series. First, we need to establish a few rules. The first of which being that there has to be a corresponding version of Black Star for Kid and vice versa. The second one is that every version of the characters will be taken straight out of the story, so if one of them doesn't currently have their weapon, they will not have them in my matchup. And lastly, I know the title says at every point, but with how Soul Eater is structured and how power progression works, there are only 5 solid points in the story I can cover in this video. Before we get started, it'd be great if you left a like on the video for the algorithm and subscribe to see future Soul Eater content here on the channel. Okay, so first we obviously have beginning of series Black Star versus beginning of series Kid, and this fight already happened in chapter 3, and Kid won pretty handily. While I must say that this fight is half treated as a gag due to Black Star and Soul's antics, this also serves as an introduction to Kid's strength relative to the rest of the main group. Not only is Kid able to easily dismiss Black Star in hand-to-hand combat, which is his specialty according to manga, he is able to do it while fighting Soul at the same time. Even Stein, the strongest Meister at the time, says his skills stand out above the rest, and Stein is able to discover everything about a person from their personality to their strength just by looking at their soul, as well as the fact that Stein had just fought Black Star a couple chapters earlier. I might get a few comments that say this is Black Star without Tsubaki versus Kid with Liz and Patty, but the rules, and even if Black Star did have Tsubaki, it wouldn't matter. Kid is simply too fast for Black Star to handle, and in terms of attack power, the most we can give to Black Star at this time in the story is making a small crater in the ground with Black Star Big Wave, while an enraged Kid destroys an entire pyramid without the use of his soul resonance. The next time we see these two fight is during the internal investigation arc, and Kid wins once again. However, it's not as bad as before. This fight has both characters weaponless, so this is purely based on hand-to-hand performance. Black Star has very clearly improved. He blitzes Kid at the beginning of this fight. In fact, he blitzes him so bad that Black Star is able to land 2 hits in a misfired soul resonance before Kid can really do anything. The two are able to clash pretty equally after this for a few pages, but once Kid gets serious about knocking Black Star out, he runs and gets behind Black Star before he can even notice and defeats him in 4 hits. Obviously, there were some outside circumstances to this fight, that being Black Star's faltering mental state at the time, so just as a bit of a hypothetical situation, I want to talk about what would happen if Black Star still had access to his soul wavelength in his fight. We know that Black Star is either equal in speed or slightly slower than Kid. I'd also say they're about equal in striking power, since Black Star is able to break one of the DWMA's spike with a single punch, and Kid is creating craters in the ground with his kicks. Now, I think Black Star wins this fight if he has access to Soul Menace, and here's why. Right as he was about to hit Kid with Soul Menace before it misfired, he says, "It's over." Some might say this is just Black Star being his usual overconfident self, but for one, Kid is the last person Black Star would underestimate out of overconfidence, since he's the only person in the DWMA who's been able to keep up with and even surpass Black Star. Now, I don't think this Soul Menace would have straight up one-shot Kid, but getting a few of those off and consistently electrocuting Kid from the inside out would net him the win in my opinion. So basically, Kid wins this with the in-story circumstances, but I think Black Star would win if he was able to utilize his soul wavelength. Let me know what you think in the comments. Moving away from fights that actually happened, we now have what is probably the most interesting matchup in this video. Black Star versus Kid during the Operation Capture Baba Yaga Castle arc. Specifically, Mifune fight Black Star versus Kid with the first line of Sanzu Awaken. And we have our first Black Star win. To put things simply, Black Star's bag is way too deep for Kid to handle, but let's talk about Kid first. Right before awakening the first line of Sanzu, Kid fights Mosquito in his form from 200 years ago, which is stated to be the fastest form with his finest nose. Kid honestly gets ragdolled in the beginning, but with some setup from Free, he's able to ultimately push this form of Mosquito into a corner. Kid seems to be able to hit hard enough to cause noticeable damage to Mosquito as long as he's able to land a blow. He's also able to avoid and counter blows from Mosquito even behind a smoke screen, which really speaks for his reaction speed. However, after Mosquito takes his form from 400 years ago, Kid gets blitzed and his arm gets cut off. After Brew helps Kid awaken the first line of Sanzu, Kid becomes able to regenerate, although we don't know the full extent of his regeneration past reattaching his arm. His already fast reaction speed becomes even faster, and he becomes able to block attacks from the guy who just cut his arm off. On top of this, he also gains defensive shields that can block Nightmare Noise, and the Death Eagles are stronger than his regular guns. To put into perspective just how strong Kid is here, we need to talk about Mosquito a bit. Mosquito is seen as someone who clashes with Giriko pretty often and early in the series, and Giriko is somewhat of a rival to Justin Law, one of the Death Sides. In his fight with Maka, Blackstar, and Kid during the battle for Brew, Mosquito takes virtually no damage from the three of them until they start using Team Soul Resonance. Now, Kid, with the first line of Sanzu awaken, is able to put up a very good fight against a Mosquito that is stronger than the one they fought before, by himself, and ends up wounding Mosquito to the point where he decides to retreat because Kid is stalling him too long. One thing of note about Kid's limitations here is that he seemingly can't regenerate massive internal damage immediately, which is a weakness when it comes to Blackstar. Now, Blackstar is an entirely different beast. I think with the use of Severed Shadow, he has far surpassed Kid's speed since he ends up leaving behind after images with physical presence. We don't really have much examples of Blackstar's striking power since he's using Tsubaki throughout the entire fight, but we can assume it's either the same as the last matchup or greater since Blackstar is constantly training. Blackstar also has the rest of his Shadow Star forms, which are simply too much for Kid to handle. Chain of Blackness is said to be a weapon form focused on attack on top of Blackstar's already insane physical abilities, along with Blackstar having the ability to change the trajectory of the blade even after it's thrown. Again, Severed Shadow just makes Blackstar too fast, and Blackstar also has Soul Menace World Destruction Cannon, which is just a stronger form of Soul Menace that Kid cannot immediately heal from. And the third limb that the Masamune form provides gives Blackstar a crazy amount of versatility in both attack and defense. Outside of his use of Tsubaki, Blackstar is said to be a true child of the martial way and can adapt to any combat situation he's in, which means that all of Kid's Reaper Taijutsu stances will not make that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. Blackstar is just too fast, too strong, and too versatile for Kid to be able to beat. Madness Blackstar vs Madness Kid in the Salvage Arc is a fight that already happened but has no conclusive ending, so I get to make up one based on pure facts and logic. This fight has both characters weaponless, which means Blackstar loses his entire bag besides Soul Menace, and Kid loses his range. I don't know if Kid got a bigger madness boost than Blackstar, but these two are completely equal throughout this entire fight. They exchange some blows but don't seem to be doing too much damage, and the two aren't massively outclassing the other in any specific stat, so I have to say that this ultimately comes out to a tie. It should be considered that Blackstar isn't there to beat Kid up, it is only there to get him out of the Book of Abon, so if you want to say that Blackstar was holding back and would win the fight if he was going all out, go ahead, but for now I'm going to call this fight a tie. The final matchup we're going to be discussing in this video is Blackstar vs Kid from the final arc of Soul Eater, the Dark Side of the Moon arc. True Death God Kid versus what I'm going to call True Warrior God Blackstar. Aside from the fact that Asura blatantly says Kid is the same as Black Star, if not slightly worse, and the fact that Atsushi Okubo himself said Black Star would win in a fight, Black Star's performance on the moon is absolutely insane. Black Star transcends human understanding and starts doing things that defy the laws of physics entirely, like grabbing lasers out of the air and lifting the moon's tooth by himself. In my opinion, Black Star's greatest feats in this fight come from his durability and endurance. Black Star is cut and stabbed multiple times by Asura, as well as having to swallow and throw up a Vajra blast, having his arm broken and his spine broken, and Asura still couldn't put him down. However, Kid can't be counted out completely. After connecting the third line of Sanzu and becoming a true death god, Kid's soul wavelength becomes big enough to cover the moon. Aside from a boost to his stats, the ability Kid gains with the third line of Sanzu is the full Madness of Order wavelength that he isn't going to use. To be a bit more fair to Kid, almost immediately after Kid awakens the third line of Sanzu, they make the plan for Kid and Black Star to open up Asura's defenses so Maka can get the hit she needs in to finish the fight. But even then, the few chances Kid gets to attack Asura are either cancelled out or do no damage. So this basically comes down to who had the better showing against Asura, and Black Star was definitely more impressive. He lands multiple hits on Asura, even making him bleed, takes a frankly ridiculous amount of his attacks and gets back up, all while actively covering for Maka whenever he can. So I really do have to agree with Asura and Okubo on giving Black Star the win here. For the overall score, it actually comes out to a tie, with Kid winning the beginning of series and internal investigation arc fights, and Black Star winning the Operation Capture Baba Yaga Castle and Dark Side of the Moon arc fights, with the Salvage Arc fights coming out as a tie.
Lately I'm feeling so cool. Yeah. Come and get a taste of the hip soul food. Spice up the animal when Neo haiku. While soul goes to school where he slash kung fu.